Sound check. Let me know if you can hear me. It has been a while. Yes. Awesome. Happy 2025. I hope you guys have been taking care of yourselves. I don't remember when the last time I went live was, but I'm pretty sure it's been like 3 or 4 months. I have not been doing well, health-wise, and just wanted to take a step back from everything, especially social media, because of a lot of reasons. When I got sick this summer along with grandma, my body just really couldn't do it anymore. Fatigue sets in really easily, and my mind is kind of just fluttering about, and it's a mixture of not being able to hold my attention span on anything, and also just maybe all sorts of anxieties. Also, the proliferation of AI has made me think about what we are feeding into the world. Every time we upload something, like our likeness, our voice, it basically feeds into the data bank for all of these, generative developments. And I got really, really tired of being on Instagram, maybe just in the last month. It's been a while now building up, but with increased AI, with seeing how little impact we actually have on policy in the world and, our well-being in general, I think I just needed a break. And there was just a lot going on in terms of trying to cope with the downgrade in my health. I haven't been able to really exercise, so that's not only taking a toll on my physical health, but also on my mental health. So it's just been kind of like a cluster of messiness, and I really just needed to give my brain as little stimulus as possible so I can get myself back to a sort of stable baseline, so that I wasn't constantly stressed out and freaking out in all of these conscious and unconscious ways. And ever since grandma got out of the hospital in July, she was soon after placed on hospice care, about a month into her return at the facility, and I was trying to manage my own health and my own energy reserves, my own stress, dealing with work and trying to figure out health insurance, which was in itself a whole different other mess, just to see the bureaucracy and the hoops that you have to jump through to try to get health care that doesn't cost $1,000 a month, was really aggravating. Obviously, the genocide hasn't gotten any better. There's disease and continual destruction of hospitals and doctors and everything. Jose Andres, who runs the WCK, just got awarded by Biden, and he received the award and took it as an honor while his employees were targeted by the IDF and killed earlier. And like, what the fuck is that shit? Like, How can you be doing relief work for the good of the people and still be wearing all smiles and honors, taking an award from the very person who headed the initiative to keep funding Israel to commit genocide and war crimes? So I haven't had an appetite to do a live, and I didn't feel like pushing myself to do anything I didn't want to do. One, because I didn't have energy to, and two, I didn't want to show you, a begrudging June who felt like an obligation to come on here. I don't think this is what the lives have ever been about. The lives have been about a place of connection, and I think I just really needed time to disconnect and figure out what the hell was going on in my own life and the world at large. And I think there's a period where, as we're trying to figure out stuff, we will feel very, very lost and potentially very, very scared and very, very deep despair and hopelessness. And so that is all normal as a part of the process of processing just the unbearable stupidity of how convoluted we have built this world to be, to generate things that we absolutely do not need, and making ourselves miserable on various levels in developing these very things that we do not need. And I kept feeling like not getting out of bed today, but I finally waited until my body kind of softly clicked into place and was like, all right, we're ready to get up now. So I listened to my body and I got up and I took my energy window, which comes and goes. It's very unpredictable. And I got dressed and I went to the farmer's market and I bought some food. And during my shopping, I kept feeling like doing a live. And I didn't know why. And I was like talking to myself in my head. I was like, why do you want to go live today? Like, why? Why today? And I didn't really have an answer until I set up the live. And I checked my phone for the date to title this live with today's date, because I didn't feel like following the naming conventions I've been following before. And so the title of this live is Sunday, January 12th, 2025. And I realized that today is Grandma's birthday. She would have been 97 today. She passed away at 10:20 a.m. on Wednesday. A few days short of her birthday. I got the call at 10:30 and I was like registering what the doctor was saying over the phone, and I felt this like lightness of relief of, oh God, Grandma finally made it to the other side. Like, we don't have to worry about her suffering anymore, and I don't have to stress out about when to visit her and whether or not she's gonna be able to eat. And the other side of me was just almost identical to the feeling I got when I received notice of my mom passing away, which was just this sudden trap door opening up underneath you, and you're kind of just like free falling, and it's not quite fully fear, and it's not quite fully excitement, but it's just like this suspension, this like whoosh. Um, so, uh, the body and the mind kind of just clicks into place. And I was already getting dressed. I had just turned on my computer to start work for the day when I got this call. So I shut down the computer, I got dressed, I phoned in my uncle who was still awake in Beijing on Skype, and we went together for the first time in months because I haven't video chatted him in a while since I've been visiting Grandma in the afternoon. But we went together to see Grandma. And the doctor showed her to me. And she said she's still warm. And she was. She was very warm. My hands were freezing from the outside. And she was very, very warm. So, now we deal with paperwork. The never-ending drudgery of bureaucracy. Even when we are dead. Again. And I still haven't finished Mom's paperwork either. And now we have to deal with Chinese bureaucracy too, because we're going to need to get my uncle's permission before Grandma can be cremated. Then I need to get the death certificate from the city government and get it translated and notarized and take it back to the city government for a supplemental paper, and then get it approved by the state government with an official stamp before I can send it back home to Beijing so my uncle can take care of tying up loose ends and affairs on his end. So it'll just be another round of this. And I don't know, maybe I felt like going live because this was a way that I honored my memories of Mom through when she passed. And maybe today was the day to honor Grandma and Mom again, because we are all tied together on her birthday. And I've gotten a few messages in the past few months that I've been off of YouTube that some of you have taken comfort or solace or gained some sort of mental preparation through watching me process my grief online. And to those of you who might be dealing with the loss of loved ones, I hope this brings you some comfort. I think it is already bringing me some comfort to share it with you. I think being alone with grief is possibly one of the most horrifying moments you can endure alone, because there really is no other way to resolve grief. You just endure it and you share it and you let others carry you for a little bit, taking turns to check in on you, offering you food, and having external sources and voices to remind you that you have to take care of yourself in this time. Because on two levels, one, your loved ones probably would have wanted you to take care of yourself as best as you can, especially in their absence. Now that they are not here to look after you and care for you, you have the extra responsibility to take extra care of yourself. And also, two, I don't know if this is just another lie / myth / fantasy that I tell myself to comfort myself, but two,
I do believe in, the law of conservation. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. And I do feel like once someone dies, their energy goes somewhere. And I do think that, maybe some of the energy of our loved ones become combined with ours, and a part of them dwells and continues to live on in us. Not just in terms of our memories of them, but also there might be some amount of them in us energetically. Um, there are just so many things that I don't think science has the capability of explaining right now, and we as a world, as a society, has learned to rely on science to tell us the quote unquote truth, but I don't really know what truth is anymore after the last 4 years. Certainly, we are very, very, very porous and vulnerable to taking in information and allowing ourselves to believe in it because it gives us a sense of security. But once you take in enough information and you step back, you might realize that what causes so much of the internal strife within us is the contradiction of these so-called truths that we all have internalized. And it gives us that feeling of perpetual conflict, which solidifies into long-term stress and residual anxiety because we don't actually know how to resolve all of the contradictions. So that is another reason for me taking a break, is just trying to digest all of the contradictions I've absorbed in my 3.5 decades of life. I will be turning 36 this year, and my body honestly feels like it's already in its 40s. The amount of aging that has happened to me over the last 5 years has been immense, and especially with this kind of health collapse since the summer, my body is changing. My face is changing. My mind is changing. And maybe even my heart. Not sure about that yet. But I think all of these things are malleable up until a certain point. So I'm not really despairing anymore. I'm not really hopeless anymore. And I'm learning to navigate the dynamics of relating to death in a more fluid way. Right now I'm in the stage of grief where all I can think about is all the shit that I did wrong. I can't let go of the fact that 10 days before Grandma passed, she was like spitting onto her bedding, and it was so gross, and I didn't want her to do it because like the nurses were overworked and nobody was really, instantaneously gonna come and clean her up, and I wanted her bed to be clean. And I shouted at her, and I was like I got kind of physically rough with her, and I knew that it was wrong of me to do it in that moment, and then I realized that it was just a combination of burnout and resentment. And for that week, it was, between Christmas and New Year's, I wanted to visit Grandma every day again. I had gotten myself down to a weekly visit when I was really sick. Then I doubled it up to twice a week. And then I increased it to every other day when I started feeling better. And for the holidays, I just felt so lonely for her, and possibly for me too, that I visited her every day, and I think that really burnt me out, even just for a week. Like, I just don't have the physicality to do that anymore. And I realized after I got really rough with her that day that I needed to go back to every other day because I just couldn't
handle that anymore. And lo and behold, 10 days later, she wasn't there anymore. I am grateful that my next visit, after I got rough with her, was really nice. She was more awake. She ate the dumplings I brought her. We didn't fight. I didn't yell. I think I told her I loved her. But you know, I can't remember. And the next 2 visits after that, she was deep, deep in sleep, to the point where I could not wake her, even with the offering of dumplings. And the nurse had told me that she had had a fever on Saturday, and so when I visited her on Sunday, all she could manage was a grunt in response to me calling out her name and trying to wake her up. And the next visit, I don't think I even got a grunt out of her. And I was starting to get worried, you know, because at this point it had been about 4 days of her being pretty unconscious. And I asked the nurse, and he was like, yeah, you know, her fever hasn't returned. We're keeping an eye on it. I was like, okay, just let me know if, you know, I should know anything more, if I should do anything more. That was 3 p.m. the day before she passed away. So I hope Grandma is at peace now. I hope she's more at ease now. The guilt phase of grief is really interesting. If you're not used to it, it can wreck you. It can drown you. It can really fuck you up. But this is my second time around dealing with grief. And I think I'm a little bit more rationally minded, and if it's not rationally minded, then it's just more experienced. But the grief phase, where you are inundated by guilt, is the spark of learning. It is where you learn who you want to be by looking at who you have been, as defined by your behaviors and patterns, and realizing that the stuff that you did in the past didn't sit well with you, and recognition of that difference and definition is the beginning of learning, and learning takes years. It doesn't happen immediately. And so I have to learn to give myself grace for abusing Grandma 10 days before she died. Because none of us knew. I don't think the nurses knew. Because I live right here. I moved this close so that I could be there in her last moments without, you know, having to deal with traffic or subway delays. But even living so close, I did not receive the call on time to be there in her last moments. Because no one really knows for sure when you go. And so now I've witnessed 2 types of death. One where it is totally unexpected and sudden and blindsiding. And the other, expected but uncertain, and kind of a drag to see the slow degradation of mind and body, and ultimately the return to where we came from. Grandma was so tiny when I saw her. I guess, you know, in her last moments they had like taken all her clothes off to try to revive her. And they were cleaning her body up and placing her in a shroud while I was trying to clean out her room. And when the nurse was done,
wrapping grandma up, she was so shrunken. Just really mostly skin and bones, which I felt when I tried to massage her shoulders and legs, but I didn't see until the very last moment. It's hard to see when you have clothes on. But learning takes a while. There's a lot to be integrated. And it was really the night after she passed that I had, like, maybe my first official emotional breakdown. Like a really sort of take your breath away sob session that started in the shower. And I just had to write down so much of what was ramming into my brain over and over again, just to get it out on paper so that I could, let myself rest. And I was actually looking back in my notebook, and I saw that my last therapy session took place January 28th. No, January 20... Let me find the page. Last year. It's been almost a year since my last therapy session. Yeah, January 28th. And I was reading the notes over, and I actually remember my therapist telling me all of this. And I also remember in that moment where I was trying to process what he was saying, and like linguistically I understood what he was saying, but in that like intellectually integrated way, I had no idea how to put into practice what he was saying. He said things like, connecting to true self through feeling. Let ideas and images come up. I was like, okay. But I had no idea what true self was, and I still don't. But it is strange how through time, things start to make more sense than they used to. So I do think learning is cumulative. He also said, be yourself. Be careful when you lose touch with who you are. And I also don't know what who I am is, So I don't really know how out of touch I am with myself, but that too is a part of being alone and away from social media. We have such an immense amount of echo chambering going on. AI, memes, trends, viral TikToks, reels, ads, consumerism, mutual aid requests, natural disasters, politicians who don't seem to give a fuck at all, and it's just a lot. I feel like you probably feel it too. It's a lot to process and understand. Way too much happening all the time, constantly, nonstop. So, last year in therapy, I have in my notes, overthinking as a defense mechanism, overanalyzing and fear-based. He said being yourself is 80% intuition, 20% analysis. He said ego is conscious, defensive self. The self is natural, organic being, less of a thinker. And he also said validate uniqueness. And I feel like a lot of social media goes through these like waves of validating uniqueness, but then everybody wants to validate that uniqueness, and that uniqueness is no longer unique anymore, and then everybody is identifying with these uniquenesses, and it's still forming this pattern of trying to fit in, right? I'm unique in this way, but I'm not alone, so I'm justified in being unique because look at all these other people who agree with me. And with long COVID, my eye strain has gotten really bad too, staring at screens. It literally hurts my eyeballs. My eyeballs want to like shut down. So I've deleted the Instagram app from my phone.
And then I realized in the 2 days following deleting Instagram off my phone that I started relying on the YouTube app to look at content. So yesterday I deleted the YouTube app off my phone. But yeah, I'm not really sure if social media is good for anything in the way that I had imagined it to be at the beginning of the genocide. I thought at the beginning of the genocide that social media could be one way for us to stay connected, get the truth, and help each other build collectivity and movements and fight. And I think social media has given us a lot of alternative news that legacy media will never ever show us. And I am thankful for the treasure trove of data and information coming from all sorts of sources on the internet. But you know, two sides of the same coin, both sides of the sword. You can kill your enemies with that sword, and you can also stab yourself or do some friendly fire damage with it as well. So it's all a matter of dosage. So thank you for listening to all of that updating and emotional vomiting. And feels so weird. But I guess happy birthday, Grandma. Both she and my mom died within a week of their birthdays. My mom died about 8 days before her birthday. My grandma died 4 days before hers. So I guess, I don't know the year, but I'll be dying in September. Because I don't know if we inherit that shit, but if we do, you know, my birthday's in September and I'll be dying in late September, I guess. If there is any sort of affirmation or direction I want to give myself in 2025, it's really just trying to immerse myself through the lens of curiosity in all things. My relationship with Grandma and visiting her was best when I viewed the visit not as a responsibility or an obligation to attend to her, but as a learning moment for myself. To be able to observe her and the changes that she's experiencing through the lens of curiosity, through seeing what it might be like to be 96, to be a survivor of so much political trauma and probably family trauma and immigrant trauma. It's really quite interesting. I mean, the human brain likes to seek patterns, but as I was filling out all the paperwork, I discovered that Grandma's Chinese passport was due to expire in May of 2025, and Grandma's green card was due to expire December of this year. And she has been in the US for almost 10 years now. She left China to be with my mom in 2015, and it just feels like it was time. It has been 3 years, 3 months since Mom died. I reached out to the medical school that I donated Mom's body to, and they told me that they are filling out paperwork to cremate Mom, finally. So maybe she and Grandma will be cremated very close in date to each other, which I find in itself a sort of coincidence that is morbidly comforting. But yeah, those are my updates. I bought 6 bags of dumplings for Grandma because she seemed to not love the buns that I was buying her as much. So I got her a new flavor of dumplings and 3 more bags of the old flavor of dumplings, and she did not get to taste any of the new dumplings. she fell sick basically right after I bought those dumplings. So now I have a lot of dumplings to eat, which sucks because I don't want to be reminded of that. And I don't want to eat those dumplings, and I kind of hate that I have them in my freezer, so I've been trying to give them away. And thankfully, some friends have taken some, and yeah, here we are. I'm going to eat some things, mostly leftovers, just get rid of some leftovers so I can cook new things. I'm still, cooking for myself. There's cauliflower soaking in the sink. There's some radish greens and breakfast radishes soaking in there too. And we're just gonna do our best to take care of ourselves. I have a little bit of a oat milk shake here. So we'll start off with some liquids. But I'm gonna drag a chair in here and I'm just probably gonna sit. And I won't be here for too long, but it did feel like there was a need for me to go live today, so I went live. And yeah, I guess my therapist said, the self is 80% intuition, so we're trying to do better to discern what the intuition is saying and following it. Be right back. You manifested me today? Wield your powers carefully. E said, June, stop talking about your death and get therapy. Can we actually talk about therapy culture though? Can we talk about how it's getting kind of toxic? I think it's great, right? Like there's a curve to all of these awarenesses, and I think 20 years ago we didn't do shit about mental health, right? And then like over the last 2 decades we began to become more educated about how much impact mental health has on us, and we started advocating for the destigmatization of seeking therapy. But therapy has turned into part of the consumeristic culture. And it has become a product to consume and take part in the culture of. And I don't love therapy as like a cover-all prescription. I am not against therapy, but therapy is not like the best case solution for everyone, because some people need like emergency help, and some people need long-term, unknotting of their own traumas and self-reified stories, and those are 2 very different sorts of counseling that you'll need. And I think everyone has like a different idea of what therapy will bring to them without thinking about what they're willing to bring to therapy. What kind of mindset are you going into therapy with? What are your goals in therapy? And what time frame do you want to achieve that goal in? And just knowing that for yourself is great, but also acknowledging the fact that therapy doesn't work like a magic pill instantaneously. Um, I might go back to therapy, but I think I'm doing a lot of work on my own. I think therapy is great for setting down like a regimen of how to counsel your own brain and thought processes through while opening doors of alternative interpretation of your world. But I don't believe in therapy as like a going every week for the rest of my life sort of thing. First of all, not all of us, most of us cannot afford that, especially if uninsured. And second of all, I think at a certain point, therapy attended at that frequency for that, undefined duration becomes a crutch rather than a sort of tool through which you accumulate your own self discovery. And I honestly believe that as we trend in this wealth gap increasing, um, more and more of us will have to find alternatives to therapy because the health industry is not there for the people, and therapists probably hate insurance companies as much as we do. And also keeping in mind that all doctors, including therapists, are human. Not everyone will fit you, not everyone will care for you in the same way, not everyone will connect with you in the same way. As much as, you are a good fit within your company at work, as much as you are a good fit in your relationship with your significant other, you might or might not be a good fit in your therapist dynamic. So that in itself is a whole thing. And also, I love talking about death. I love talking about death not to like be pessimistic. I love talking about death because I want to destigmatize death. Because I believe more and more that if we can work on destigmatizing death together, we will live life in a much more liberated way. Meaning right now I see us trapped in all sorts and forms of prison. Everything from mandated labor, which is capitalism's form of slavery. It's just, recycled for 2025. I see a lot of us trapped in cycles of consumerism that is not done for our own benefit, but for our social capital benefit. Meaning, if I buy this and my friends see that I buy this, or even strangers that don't know me see me buy this and wear this and use this and live it, then I can be the person they want me to be, and I can be more desired and wanted. And I think all of these industries are bolstered by the fact that all of us are terrified of death, because not only do we have a primordial animalistic disdain and fear of death, but we have also engendered cultural benefits to harnessing our fear of death to sell more shit. So I love talking about death because I don't think we should be scared of it. I think we should acknowledge it, and I think we should prepare ourselves for it, and eventually in the learning of what death is and how it weaves into life throughout the process of life, we can find comfort in it. Again, operating with curiosity and a mind towards learning rather than judging, I think we can make ourselves happier. And not in that sense of like, wow, I am the best I've ever felt and this is all I've ever wanted out of life. Because that sort of thinking, I think, is still coming from like a capitalistically schooled mind. But that's just me. I'm not for everyone, and my therapist told me to be unique, so here we are being unique. I'm seeing de-influencing trending now on social media. So I think you and I both know that we've been doing this for years, and finally it's happening on the greater scale. So I'm glad to see it's happening. Fucking de-influence the shit out of fear of death. I'm not saying we can't fear death. I'm not saying that we will get to a point where we don't fear death. I'm just saying acknowledge the fact that we fear death and try to learn about why we fear death. And maybe in learning about that, we can learn to confront ourselves in so many ways that we remove the stumbling block in our lives. That is ultimately our own mental constructions. And it's not really even our own mental constructions. It's like a societally mandated mental construction that was implanted in us from a young age and reinforced from all sides and angles until we held it as our personal truths. If we don't want to operate within the realm of genocide and increasing natural disasters while marking all-time record high profits, then I think we need to like kind of step out of our acknowledged truths and see if there's another way to look at how our life unfolds that doesn't play into genocide and maximizing profit and chasing glory at all times. I think it's fine to want things. I'm not saying we should all be like, ascetic monks who doesn't want anything and has eliminated desire and is like, reaching nirvana in our spiritual pathways. I'm just saying maybe there's another way to look at this. So, yeah. Life goes on. Ultimately, life always goes on. We are part of life, but we don't own life. We don't lose life. We just get to experience life. And none of us really know for how long, but here we are, right? And it's really fucking magical that we have advanced technology to this point. That I can speak to 172 people and they can hear me almost instantaneously. Aaron recently just took a trip to Europe and I was watching his stories when I was still on Instagram. I was watching his stories that he was posting in real time of like the holiday markets that he was going to and the meals that he was eating, and I was like, damn, like this is exciting. It's almost like I'm traveling with him, but from my own apartment, And so a lot of great things have been created. It's just that two sides of the same coin, you'll always pay for it in another consequence. And the consequence of this sort of modern miracle is accelerated global warming and genocide. And it's horrible and it's painful. And so just learning to use it strategically. Sort of like how when New York City had a drought warning because we didn't have rain for a month, and we started getting brush fires, they were like, monitor your water usage. Like, maybe don't use as much water. And I feel like this is what we have to kind of learn for ourselves. That just because something is made accessible to us does not mean that we have to partake in it. And so we do have all of this potential power to do great things. If we don't use it carefully, it will have disastrous consequences. And we are seeing this in real time. "15 months of genocide and still ongoing." And Palestine is fading from both the news cycle as well as social media posts. Now it's all about the LA wildfires. And honestly, it just feels like we always have some sort of disaster looming, We got flood, we got fire, we got, assassinations. So, yes. So that's what's on my mind. Sarah says, how do you prepare for death? I think you prepare for death by doing what my therapist said, which is to feel your feelings, feel your body. Like, once I feel my body, the process of understanding the sensations that are changing in my body is already in itself an automatic preparation for death, right? Like, I can feel my hair thinning. I can feel my muscles disappearing. I can feel my bones aching. I can see my stress like showing up in my face and bloating and like changing its shape. And I'm not saying that's death, but I'm saying that's change. And ultimately, death is just the most extreme point of change that we can observe as living beings, right? There is nothing more drastic of a change than dying for us as living beings. And so I think if we just tune into the mindfulness that everybody keeps talking about, that is preparing for death. Because death in our minds at this point, schooled by society, is still this thing to be feared, to be avoided, to be worked away from us, right? Exercise and eat and, do all of these meditations and like you do all of these other self-care things to prevent an untimely death. But what is a timely death? Now I've seen my mom drop dead a week short of 62, and I've seen grandma pass away at the age of almost 97, and I don't really know what timely is. It would be hard for me to choose one or the other, but seeing the pain and the slow degradation of the body and mind and the mental torture that it brought grandma, if I had to choose between dying like my mom did and dying like grandma did, I would choose to die like my mom did. But we don't get that choice. And so making peace with the fact that we don't get to choose how we die, when we die, how long it takes for us to actually die, is part of making peace and preparing for death. How do we make peace? How do we prepare for life? I'm still preparing for life. I still don't know how to be in a romantic relationship. And now I'm trying to understand why I prioritized such things so high up. And I'm realizing now, as I'm witnessing myself in my body and my feelings, that I don't want to prioritize certain things that much anymore. And allowing myself to change through the transformation of life events, changes, death, is in a way a preparation for death. Death is really just becoming comfortable with change. Getting ready for death is just allowing ourselves to be familiar with no longer being in this state permanently forever. Understanding that everything is temporary. Easier said than done. Again, it takes time. It takes loss to integrate that. I find that I have a hard time talking to friends in my age range now who have not lost parents. Because I think they either feel sorry for me or they feel like fearful of me, honestly, because I talk about death in such an unabashed way, in such an unfiltered way, that it scares them because they're not ready for it, because they haven't been exposed to it. They haven't had to be exposed to it. So yeah, it does create distance in terms of social dynamics to experience more and more of life and more of death. I find that the best answers are always in the right questions. And so if you keep asking yourself the right questions and you operate with mindfulness towards the lens of curiosity being your default lens, the learning that you'll take in is probably beyond what you can imagine right now. We are blind to a lot of things because we have to be, right? Like the way that our brain ingests information and data intake from the world is through our eyeballs, but our eyeballs like turn blind to certain things. You've seen those things where they have like a double worded typo, like 2 thes in a row, and then your brain just neglects to take in the second the and it doesn't even see the typo. We're blind all the time. And it's because I think existentially we have to be in order to survive. So in order to see, sometimes things won't make sense. You'll just see a lot of things that don't really make sense. And then maybe over time, you can make some sense out of it. But ultimately, how does genocide make sense? Yeah, it makes sense under the lens of capitalism. We have to sell weapons, we have to keep developing, upward trending of development, of sales, of profit, and ultimately we have to use the weapons on somebody, right? So we use the weapons on a population that we commit genocide against. But if we take the lens of capitalism out of there, how the fuck does a genocide make sense? Oh, Sarah says, I guess I meant how do you prepare for the grief that comes with the loss of a loved one? I don't have an answer for you. I think all of us can't really prepare in the same way, and ultimately none of us can prepare at all. I knew that grandma was going to die. But honestly, when I was so sick this summer, I thought I was going to die before grandma did, because she had gone through so much in her life. She lost her daughter in just the last 3 years. She lost her daughter, went to the ER twice, and had like sepsis. No, she went to the ER 3 times in the last 3 years. So I was like, oh, she's triumphed over all of these hurdles. She's made of iron. And so I was expecting grandma to die in one part of my brain, and then the other part was like, fuck, I'm gonna die before she's gonna die. Like, it's anyone's guess now. And then when she finally did pass away, I was still unprepared. I remember being by her bed and the doctor telling me what she was trying to do in the last moments to resuscitate her. And I remember touching grandma's like arm and her chest. And I just remember like shaking, like not extremely, but just like my hand wasn't steady. And I remember panicking. I just remember standing there looking at my grandma's corpse with the doctor behind me, just, attending to me, taking in this scene. And I remember like swiveling. I remember like looking at my grandma, turning to the doctor, looking at my grandma, turning to the doctor, going like, I don't know what to do. Like, what do I do now? Tell me what to do, So, I never got to see my mom's body in person. I saw it on video chat half the world away. But I saw my grandma's body. And I think seeing a corpse is a really fascinating moment of confrontation and recognition. It's like seeing the husk of the house that we lived in. It's kind of like moving out of a place you grew up in, and now it doesn't have most of the furniture or any of the furniture that made the house the house. It doesn't have any of the decoration that you associated with each room. All the color has been drained from your walls and, the stuff that you put on your desktop and your counters and your walls. And it's like you recognize that house. It's still the house you grew up in, but it's not yours anymore because you're moving. You're moving someplace else. And like there's a part of you that recognizes this is my home, but another part that's like it's not your home anymore. And I remember the nurse who wrapped grandma up asking me, did you say your goodbyes? Did you say goodbye to grandma? And I remember looking at grandma just like so shrunken in that shroud. And I remember like looking at the mess that I was making in the room, trying to clear it out, deciding what to keep and what to throw away. And I remember replying, I don't think grandma's here anymore. And the nurse opened up the window and she was like, I'm gonna open up the window. Maybe grandma can like escape. Yeah, that's death. It's just another transition. We don't know what comes after that transition, but honestly, to be honest, if we think about it, we don't know what comes after every transition. What kind of foresight do you have? Even when you leave an old job to a new job that you were looking forward to when you interviewed for it and delighted when you got it, you don't know how that new job is going to turn out. You don't really know all the interpersonal dynamics that will show up over time. You don't really know what the politics of that company is. You don't really know what kind of policies they'll exert. You don't know if your boss and your manager will hate you. You just don't know. You can hope for the best, but you don't know. Ultimately, that is mindfulness. That is making peace. You can fall in love with someone and fully believe that you love them unconditionally. And you can fantasize and imagine and palpably conjure scenes of your life together in the future. And months or years or even decades down the road, it doesn't manifest that way. So what I'm thinking and asking us all to ponder is, what aspect of our life can we actually foresee the transitioning becoming? One Long Listening. That's an interesting name. I'll look it up. I'm gonna go back and read some of your comments, and it's 1:33. I think I'll probably hop off in 20-30 minutes. Really grateful to be able to share this with you all and have you share things with me, and thank you for keeping me company. I don't know how many of you were here when my mom passed away, but your company throughout the months that followed my mom's death helped me tremendously. Truly. I don't think I would have been able to process and survive that time had I not had this outlet. And the advice, the community of absolute strangers confiding in me and sharing with me and advising me and comforting me. So thank you very much for all of these years. I think it's really fascinating how we won't change until we have to. And because of my mom dying, and because of me having to take on responsibility for grandma and do all of these things, I am changing because I have to change. And so, a blessing and a curse, because I had to say goodbye to my former self. But also this means I get to live variations on a life. So yeah, Krishna said a while back in the chat, I don't like people who hate talking of death. Isn't that the end game? It will eventually happen to us all, and the fact that people don't talk enough of our impending doom, that's weird. And it's not really like an impending doom. I think that's why people avoid it, is if we think about it as impending doom, which we do, collectively we do, it's a fearful thing, but maybe we don't think of death as impending doom. maybe we think of death as a release and a gateway. Wow. Someone said in the chat that they had a therapist focus on their weight and suggested Jesus and withholding sex to lose weight. See, guys, like, not all therapists are created equal. Be careful. Some therapists can actually do harm. So there is a risk factor to it. Many risk factors to it. Especially in your most vulnerable moments, when you are most susceptible to taking on other people's critique or suggestions or orders. It's a really weak point to have confused people in your life. I do agree. I would love to try a POC therapist. I tried an Asian lady when I was therapist shopping after my mom passed away, and she gave me the advice of taking cold showers for anxiety, and it felt really like surgical the way our dynamic was. I ended up finding a therapist, the therapist I saw last January, who I really loved. I loved working with him. Not a POC. He was a white man. But he was like a hybrid of therapy schools in terms of what he practiced, which I really enjoyed. So sometimes you just gotta shop around. Not every therapist will work for you. Krishna says you can never be prepared for your death unless you're suicidal, but that would negate the preparedness. You can only prepare for the death of others, but it will still hurt you either way. Yeah, and I also don't know if you can prepare for your death even if you are suicidal. Like, I think there's a lot of stories of people committing or attempting suicide and then, like, not having it go through successfully, and then they do a 180 on their life after, and it became clear to them that it wasn't death that they needed. So again, there is science that say that most of the way we behave is influenced by unconscious beliefs and thought patterns, and some therapists say that like 90 to 95 of our thinking and cognition is unconscious. So we can be conscious of a very small sliver, potentially, of who we are and what we're doing and why we're doing it. A lot of it is just rationalizing, retrospectively. And so letting go of the ego is a sort of death, seen from the lens of societal normalization. And so freedom is liberation from societal norms. But that is also scary because you risk ostracization when you free yourself from the standard. So it's trade-offs. So not one way is better than another. It's just what you need in the moment. And I think we are all flexible and malleable enough to keep switching back and forth so long as we allow ourselves to. I think the big sticking point is like defining the self and giving importance to the self in a way that builds up the ego and makes it almost invincible against change. And that is what makes us so brittle against the concept of death, is that we've built up this whole structure of who we are and how we should be, that once we are met with roadblocks or permanent changes that prevents us from continuing that actualization of the ego and self, that we become fearsome, and then we lash out, and then maybe we become angry and all sorts of other emotions that might feel really negative. We build ourselves up, and we are constantly influenced by our external circumstances. So anything goes. If somehow magically you could find out when you'll die, would you want to know? Shazi. I was thinking about this 2 days after Grandma died, and I was walking back to the rehab center to try to get paperwork. And there's pros and cons. I really don't think I can make that choice. The pro of knowing is that you can live your life to the fullest. The con of knowing is that you will become a ball of anxiety as you approach that date. Either way, knowing will affect the way you live the rest of your days out. So, I don't think it makes a good or bad difference. It's just different. And I think maybe that is the most neutral and healthy way to think about things, is that they're just different. Every choice that you make will land you in difference. But isn't variety the spice of life? And some people don't like it spicy, you know? It's not for everyone. But how else are you going to taste difference if you don't allow for change? That's really kind of you. The comment says, when my dad passed, I inherited a small amount of money. I used it to purchase myself a cremation. It gives me comfort knowing that this burden is cared for. Friends and family were shocked. That is truly a huge kindness. Death work, death preparation is a final gift to those who love you. It makes things easier for them to deal with the impact of grieving in your absence. So your friends and family will be grateful when the day comes. Yeah, you're right. Wow, you remembered the day my mom passed. Yep. Wow. Thank you for sharing. Comment says, you helped me and my wife feel connected over the pandemic. So thank you for helping us. Thank you. I'm so glad. Yeah, families who consider death to be a taboo topic makes dealing with death and grief so difficult. I am very lucky to have a family who is Chinese and normally doesn't talk about all of this, but my aunt and my uncle have been very, very open in discussing these matters with me. And, they tell me tales of like their friends, parents aging, and like their trials and tribulation of caretaking in the senior years, and it's intense, guys. They told me of two of their friends whose mom uh, just got really sick, and they were trying to take care of her at home, and it became so overwhelming that they both got hospitalized due to how much exertion and stress uh, they put forth in the caretaking process. So, it's kind of just like we are pouring our lives into each other back and forth. Like 2 cups of water, you're just like pouring into each other's cup, taking turns. And it becomes very hard when it's one sided. And we see this in friendships too. We see this in relationships too. And so a lot of self care is realizing that some people aren't able to pour back into you and to decide for yourself if you would like to step away from that dynamic sometimes to take care of you. Um, because if you don't take care of you, you will also have nothing to give anymore either. So it's a balancing act. And it's really hard to deal with grief and guilt and shame when you feel incapable of balancing it all and you feel like you underserved someone that you loved. But we have our limits. You are underserving yourself when you don't take care of yourself first. Um, yeah, Sarah. It is natural for us to be fearful of the loss of someone and having to go through that. Uh, but while they're still here, spend time with them and just observe what it feels like to be with them. And when you feel conflict arising, try your best to like take a step back and just observe. Like pause. Pause what it's triggering in you and see if you can find the source of the fear or the sadness before it turns into anger. This is something that I need to work on too. I need a lot of help working on this. I think I inherited a lot of outbursty sorts of anger from potentially both my parents. So through this kind of like guilt-ridden reflection of losing my mom and my grandma, it's helping me attune more to where I need to work on myself to not commit the same sins over and over again. If I can't stop committing them, then at least I can commit them with less frequency. And I think grandma has helped me deal with that internal flaw and conflict a lot. And so I remain so grateful for grandma for teaching me all of these things. And, you know, she abused me and I abused her, and it was an exchange of abuse, but it was also an exchange of learning. And I guess I want to share with you all like 3 advice points that she shared with me in her last month alive. She told me various times, multiple times, that when you are angry or fighting with someone, to try not to engage in the argument with them in that moment, to just return to that issue at a later time when you're both more stable. This is fascinating because I've been seeing modern therapists give this advice too. And again, there's exceptions, right? Don't do this with your abuser. Like, you don't have to forgive your abuser if they're definitely abusing you. But if you both love each other and you want to have a life together and you want to make it sustainable, try not to fuel the fire in the moment. Let it die down. Come back to it a few days later and just bring it up in a calmer tone. This is something that will take potentially 3 or 4 years for me to work on. I can sense it not being an easy task for myself. The second advice that she gave me was, don't eat things that you don't want to eat, because your body will not digest it well, which I found fascinating. I mean, grandma always refused to eat vegetables when she was living with my mom, and she still lived to almost 97. So keep in mind that it is possible to change yourself to like things that you didn't used to like before, but if you keep forcing yourself to eat things that you don't like, that could be a form of long-term self-abuse, and you might be developing a hateful relationship with yourself if you keep forcing yourself to eat things that you don't like, which might very well affect your digestive health, if nothing else. Probably other things too. What was the third thing that she advised me on? Sleep. Oh God, I really need to do better with this. My sleep has been shattered for the last 4 years, and that's another reason why my health is so bad right now. You know, just the stress and the anxiety and the really horrible sleep habits. You must get enough sleep. Grandma says you must get enough sleep. So sleep. Sleep and rest. Eat things that you like. Eat things that are good for you, that you like. And don't fuel the fire in arguing with your loved ones. Have you ever thought that menopause is causing a lot of the issues and changes you are experiencing? Yes, we are talking more about menopause now, more than ever before. And we are also talking about perimenopause now. I'm turning 36 this year. My periods have gotten significantly more painful post-COVID infection. I've also never had good menstrual health. My menstrual cycles have always been some kind of wonky. So very well could be a hormonal disturbance causing all my health problems to be even worse. There's just so many layers to the intricacies of the human body. There's not one factor of what's causing me to be this sick. It's everything. It's the world on fire, in genocide, we're in hell, right? It's the family grief and the stress, and the pain. It's the emotional impact of having romantic relationships fall through. It's losing jobs and seeing what corporations are all about and seeing how our world is just wrapped up in the corporate power struggles. It's trying to understand how to stay alive in a world that does not care for life. It's trying to understand what to prioritize in a world that does not prioritize health and well-being. It's trying to understand how to combat the offensive elements of our lives without combating the goodness that still does exist in life. So there's a lot to learn and process. Yes, my boss Ethan, who lives very close to me, he did bring me. He invited me over actually, and we talked a lot. And he gave me some of his lamb and lentil stew. Apparently, it's like a Sumerian recipe. It's very delicious. He shared some of this with me, and then we tasted a lot of chocolates that he ordered. They were cacao beans fermented with spice, and it was incredible. And then I ended up staying long enough that we ended up picking up his kids from daycare with his wife, and I walked his dog, and I stayed for dinner, and it was just really nice to be in the company of people. So I'm very blessed to have people in my life check in on me, and I'm very blessed to have you all, especially if you've been here for years and you know what my deal is and you are still accepting of me. It is really hard to find people in physical proximity to me who can understand what I'm saying without feeling offended. So it is magical to have strangers on the internet be like, yeah, I see what you're saying, and I agree, and what you have said has helped me. That's great. That's very validating. And we don't really find external validation to be a sustainable way to fuel us, but it is necessary once in a while, to know that we're not alone in our beliefs. So bananas, I hope you make spaghetti, and I hope that it brings you warmth and maybe some tears, but cathartic tears, tears that drop into the spaghetti and make them taste like grandma spaghetti. That's you crying the memories of grandma and the love and the meals shared, and maybe some of her essence in there. And Surreal Sister says, I'm so glad you found the courage to go live today. Yeah, maybe it was grandma's encouragement. Who knows? I just felt like there was this almost nagging conversation going on inside me saying, go live today. It's time. You're ready. And I was like, okay, I guess we'll do it. And I even debated with myself as I was cutting up the cauliflower in the sink, like, but it was time. And I think I wanted to share grandma's passing here. It just feels like a full circle almost because I shared mom's passing here, and it was just it. I think sharing mom's death with the live stream community here and the Instagram followers potentially changed the way that my life unfolded after mom's death. It made me a much more um, hopeful person. It was very nourishing for me to see strangers be so supportive in both an online sense and a in-person sense. There were some followers who showed up in my life in the flesh to help me with stuff, and that was just beyond my wildest imaginations. My mom was a very cloistered person. I think as immigrants you just become fearful of the environment that surrounds you, and nothing really feels settled or safe, because you don't ever quite belong. And so mom's death and me sharing her death with such a wide audience kind of opened me up in a way that I didn't foresee happening. For better and for worse, like there have been people who have like taken advantage of that openness since, but I have also gained so much faith in people through that process. So what's in my shake? There's matcha, there's oats, there's some walnuts, toasted walnuts, and that might be it for today. Not a whole lot going, just pretty simple. Yes, Ask a Mortician video. I've seen those. Really fascinating stuff. I think everybody should watch more like death work content. Honestly, it's available on the internet. It's such a friendly way to learn about it because you can watch it when you're ready and prepared for it rather than watching it as like a tourniquet. Like, you don't want to watch that stuff when you're already bleeding out from grief and sudden loss. Watch it when you are not grieving so that it can start to deconstruct some of the taboos that is holding you from approaching death with openness. In terms of Chinese zodiac, my grandmother was a rabbit. Andrea Johnson. The comment field is not available because this is a live. So you can only comment in the live chat right now. But once the live is done, you'll be able to comment in the permanent comment box. The chat will replay after a few hours of concluding the live. Wow, Doc Marmalade says, true, there's a study to support decreased absorption when eating foods you don't like. Grandma has so much wisdom. Hey Nalco, Grandma has so much wisdom. Like, even for someone who seems technically uneducated, she's lived through so much of life. And this is what I'm finding out too, is that once you've lived enough life with enough of an observational lens and openness to absorbing the reality around you without filtering it through conscious rationalization, a lot of things that are scientific and established is actually just very visible and palpable immediately in your life. You can definitely intuit a lot of the truths of life. And so, yeah, grandma's advice, priceless. Yes, I got bangs. I gave myself bangs on Christmas. I needed something. Honestly, my body dysmorphia, I've been able to keep it under wraps just because I know I can't suffer more mentally now. But not being able to exercise, losing all of my muscle mass, it's done a number on me. And now I have like, I'm really out of shape and I have like this stressed, bloated face. And I just hated looking at my face in the mirror every day. So I decided to change up my hair. Um, and I gave myself bangs. And also my hair has been, whatchamacallit? I've been losing hair. You know, like my hairline was starting to get sparse. So I felt like the tension of my ponytails and my buns were maybe even pulling on my hairline. So I decided to trim bangs so that my hairline could get a break. But yeah, there's a lot of physical changes happening. I'm trying to just accept it with kindness. I've been doing a lot of like internal family systems therapy on myself, that parts work, where you are identifying your inner child and its fears, and you try to be the healthy parent to support it. Um, I think now that I've lost my mom and my grandma, I have to be both to myself. So so much appreciation in the chat, y'all. It's true. Okay. Mr. Bitter Old Queen says, I find that, June, you have been blessed, cursed with concentrated humanity in a world where so many of us are diluted. We even each other out. Yeah, this is true. I've always thought, up until very recently, like, why aren't others on the same page as me? Like, how could you not see this? And I've accepted, in witnessing my grandmother's, like, decline, that sometimes we are just unable to do things. Like when I shouted at her and like pushed her from trying to stop her from spitting on her blanket, I didn't realize in that moment that she didn't have a choice to not do that. Like that was the only thing she had access to. It was only in retrospect, 10 days later, when she died, that I realized, oh shit, she was 10 days away from dying. Like she literally could not manage to do anything else than spit into her blanket. Like she couldn't even do the 2 inches over the bed into the trash bin. She couldn't reach for the tissue paper to spit it into the tissue paper. She just couldn't. And so I think a lot of us think that others can be on our level and they can do what we can do, but they actually can't. And so that's acceptance. That's giving grace. And it's not really grace for them, but it's grace for us. It's grace for ourselves for wanting to see others be so close and connected and similar to us and realizing that they can't. And it's grace for us to soothe ourselves with, to soothe our disappointment and our sadness for that missed potential for connection. So that's also something that I hope to be internalizing a little bit more in the coming years. Will you be back soon, you think? Maybe. Maybe that I've broken the seal of hiatus. It'll be less overwhelming emotionally for me to come back live. But I still don't think I'm at a point where I can guarantee a live. But you know, if I feel like not so stressed from work or paperwork and dealing with the logistics of international death certificates, and I'm in the kitchen, yeah, I'm happy to be here. Hopefully next time I'm back we'll cook a little bit more. But right now all I can do is sit and sit. it's really it's really sad how little I am capable of compared to like a year ago. But a lot has happened in the last year. Um, like a lot has happened. Like just seeing the genocide continue was just debilitating. I'm trying to understand how that could happen in 2024 in such an advanced year. Mind-numbingly unfigurable. And then I got dumped twice, so quickly followed up by a mono and grandma's ER visit, and that whole mental breakdown and physical breakdown. And more emotional stuff came out of one of those breakups after I got mono too. Like I learned more things that totally wiped me out. I was crying so bad for 2 months basically on and off, and now I have grandma's grief to deal with alongside all of those kind of unfinished sadnesses. So they're just all gonna take their turn, you know. It'll be like a little buffet of sadness swirling around until I finish digesting it all. But it's okay. We have time. We have as much time as we're given. Damn, stay safe in Alaska. Windstorm in Alaska. Yeah, you see a sense of calm. That's great. Yeah, I kind of feel this draining sensation happening in my upper body. It's kind of like washing down my upper back into my flank and kidney area and down my spine. Um, Not sure what that's about, but it could be fatigue or it could be relief. Relief that I'm back on alive. Relief that grandma's hopefully off in a more peaceful, restful state. Um, Relief that I delivered the news of her passing to you all. Relief that I got to talk about it. Yeah, I mean, we're all gonna be underwater, and I think a part of recognizing our own patterns is knowing to practice how to hold our breath a little bit longer every time we're drowning, and to understand that we can emerge from that drowning if we allow ourselves enough space to break free from that passing state of mind. Every state of mind is passing. Every state of stress is to some degree within our control to let go of. Not completely. Not if you're living under genocide, obviously. But in this relatively luxurious life, I can practice letting go of mental states that feel overwhelming. And that in itself is a form of learning and mastery of what it means to exist. Are you going to do something for your first Lunar New Year with the rabbit involved? Sounds like it would help keep the joy of it. Well, it's not going to be the year of the rabbit. It's actually going to be the year of the snake. It's my year. Chinese zodiac, 12-year cycles. I'm 36, so this will be my third zodiac year. I actually don't know when the year of the rabbit is. But yeah, it's really hard being on my own, detached from family. Lunar New Year is really all about family gathering and food and feasting and enjoying that atmosphere, much like Thanksgiving and Christmas. So, you know, given my physical state, I don't think I'll really be doing anything to celebrate it. I might boil some pre-made store-bought dumplings and just cry into the pot and eat it. So yeah, that's it. I'm going to hop off now and hopefully I'll see you sometime within the next 4 months. Hopefully it's not going to be another 4 months of silence, but in the meantime, take care of yourselves. Remember that anger hurts you too. Anger is just an expression of hurt that has already been dealt and is reverberating through you. So take care of you first and understand where that anger is coming from so that you don't keep injuring yourself with that anger. And really at the base of it, loving yourself is the first step in loving others. And so figuring out what you need to do life with ease, whatever that may mean for you, really important and really fundamental. So don't skip out on that. Learn yourself first and be open to change. And everything that I'm saying to you, I'm actually just saying to myself. So thank you for being my sounding board. Yeah, that's it. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good week. Bye.